Have you ever noticed a number that seems to follow you around? Perhaps it's 1111 glowing on a clock, or a license plate bearing the same digits over and over. At first glance, these moments feel coincidental, but what if there's something more? Could they be whispers from the universe, an ancient language of guidance waiting to be understood? Numbers carry a power far beyond their mathematical roots. Across cultures and philosophies, whether in Buddhist teachings, feng shui, astrology, or numerology, they have always been more than symbols. They are carriers of energy and intention, subtle guides nudging us toward clarity, purpose, and connection. All it takes is a shift in perspective to see numbers not as random figures, but as tools for self-discovery. Whole numbers resonate universally. Their meaning often feels deeply personal. They seem to reflect the unique energy of the observer. For intuitive individuals, such as those born under Cancer, the patterns of numbers might align effortlessly with emotional and spiritual depths, creating a sense of connection that feels almost magical. Yet numbers are not confined by astrological signs or belief systems. Their guidance extends to anyone ready to notice and embrace their significance. This isn't about blind faith or mysticism. Numbers invite exploration and discovery, offering a balance between intuition and practicality. They help us recognize patterns, find meaning, and navigate life's uncertainties. Imagine a world where synchronicities become signposts and life feels less chaotic, more intentional. Numbers are not just mystical, they are transformative tools that guide us with purpose. Each number carries its own energy, acting as a quiet invitation from the universe to pause, reflect, and trust in your journey. They remind you that you're exactly where you're meant to be, poised for growth and new opportunities. And today, we'll begin exploring the deeper meanings behind these numbers. They are more than abstract ideas. They are stepping stones that illuminate your path, guiding you toward the life you've always envisioned. Let's begin. Numbers have always been revered for their mysterious power. They transcend mere calculation and measurement, offering glimpses into something timeless and intuitive. Throughout history, they've served as bridges between the physical and the transcendent, unlocking clarity and transformation for those who pay attention. Imagine noticing the number 33 on your phone, then seeing 88 in a headline, and later finding a receipt totaling 22. These patterns feel deliberate, don't they? Like threads weaving a tapestry too intricate to dismiss as coincidence. Such numbers often act as subtle nudges from the universe, inviting you to notice, to pause, and to explore their meaning. For those who are naturally attuned to their inner world, these moments can feel profoundly personal. Cancer, a sign celebrated for its emotional depth and intuition, might experience an even stronger resonance with these patterns. Yet the magic of numbers is not exclusive. Their energy is universal, offering guidance to anyone ready to listen. They serve as affirmations during uncertainty, quiet beacons of clarity and purpose. Every number arrives with intention, carrying vibrational energy that speaks directly to the circumstances of your life. A double-digit number appearing in a moment of chaos might gently encourage balance and serenity. A repeated sequence may urge you to take bold, transformative action. At other times, a single number could whisper a reminder to nurture relationships and cultivate love and understanding. These moments are not fleeting. They're deliberate, urging us to align with our inner purpose and embrace clarity and opportunity. When you start to notice these numbers, they stop being random. They become tools for transformation, opening doors to synchronicity and offering practical guidance for navigating life's complexities. Numbers help us merge the mystical with the practical, making life feel richer and more intentional. This isn't about chance or superstition, it's about alignment. Numbers remind us that the universe operates in patterns. When we tune into those patterns, we find a flow that feels natural and effortless. Imagine stepping into that flow, discovering courage to embrace change, wisdom to face challenges, and joy in uncovering your purpose, all through the quiet, profound presence of numbers. As we delve deeper into this journey, we'll explore the essence of 8 extraordinary numbers. Their specifics will remain a mystery for now, but their energy is already inviting you to notice the patterns around you. These numbers are not here to predict your future. They are here to empower you to create it. They are guides, helping you live with intention and purpose. So take a moment to reflect. Breathe in this affirmation. I am ready to receive guidance and align with my higher purpose. With that in mind, let's uncover how these numbers can transform the way you perceive the world and illuminate your path.
Number 3, the vibrant essence of creativity and growth. The number 3 pulses with vibrant energy, symbolizing creativity, joy, and the courage to express one's authentic self. It is the dynamic force that drives innovation and inspires us to share our unique perspectives with the world. Known as the number of artists, dreamers, and visionaries, 3 carries a reminder that true fulfillment comes from unlocking and embracing the creativity within us, fostering growth in both personal and collective dimensions. In numerology, 3 is closely associated with inspiration and communication. It resonates deeply with those who strive to create, express, and inspire others. For Cancer, a zodiac sign defined by emotional depth and intuition, the energy of 3 aligns seamlessly. Cancers possess a natural ability to channel this energy into meaningful artistic or personal expressions, connecting their rich emotional world with the creative power of 3. This connection extends beyond the individual, touching on spiritual and cultural wisdom. In Buddhist philosophy, the number 3 represents the 3 jewels, the Buddha, the Dharma, teachings, and the Sangha, community. This symbolism emphasizes that creativity and growth are not solitary journeys but are enriched through shared experiences and collective guidance. Similarly, in Feng Shui, 3 is associated with the wood element, representing vitality, growth, and renewal, an energy that nurtures creativity and fuels personal development. Incorporating the energy of 3 into daily life can unlock incredible possibilities. It invites us to explore creative outlets, dedicating time to activities that allow for authentic self-expression. Whether through writing, painting, or simply finding innovative solutions to everyday challenges, creativity thrives when nurtured. Equally important is the practice of clear and heartfelt communication. The energy of 3 flourishes when we share our thoughts and emotions with authenticity, transforming not only our relationships but also our connection with ourselves. The number 3 also reminds us to seek inspiration in our surroundings. Vibrant colors, natural elements like wood, or meaningful art can enhance our environment, creating spaces that encourage joy and innovation. Collaboration, 2, plays a vital role in amplifying the energy of 3. Engaging with others who inspire and challenge us leads to deeper connections and richer creative experiences. For Cancer, this energy is an open invitation to channel their nurturing nature into creative pursuits. Whether through storytelling, crafting harmonious spaces, or expressing emotions through art, Cancer's empathetic qualities can bring profound depth to their work. This alignment not only fosters personal growth but also creates a ripple effect of connection and inspiration for others. Take a moment to reflect on this affirmation. I embrace creativity and growth. allowing my unique light to shine. The number 3 teaches us that creativity extends far beyond artistic endeavors. It's a way of approaching life itself with curiosity, vitality, and authenticity. By embracing the energy of 3, we open ourselves to endless possibilities, building deeper connections and discovering the joy of living fully and vibrantly. Whether crafting a masterpiece, nurturing relationships, or simply seeking inspiration in the ordinary, the number 3 is a call to live with passion, creativity, and a renewed sense of purpose. Number 7, the path to wisdom and introspection. The number 7 carries an energy that speaks to spiritual insight, introspection, and the quest for deeper truths. It is the number of seekers and philosophers, guiding those who find fulfillment in unraveling life's hidden mysteries. With its quiet yet profound presence, 7 invites us to pause, reflect, and connect with our inner wisdom, offering clarity amid the complexities of life. In numerology, 7 is often associated with spiritual awakening and analytical thought. Unlike energies focused outward, 7 turns its gaze inward, emphasizing the importance of self-exploration. It is a reminder that the answers we seek are often already within us, waiting to be uncovered. The energy of 7 aligns with the profound journey of understanding one's purpose and gaining insight into the greater truths of the universe. For Cancer, a zodiac sign renowned for its intuition and emotional depth, the energy of 7 resonates on a deeply personal level. Cancer thrives in environments that encourage introspection, and 7 amplifies their ability to connect with their inner voice. This connection fosters self-awareness, allowing them to navigate challenges with calm and clarity, grounded in a sense of purpose. The essence of 7 is also reflected in spiritual teachings. In Buddhist philosophy, it mirrors the concept of mindfulness, reminding us of the value of being present and observing life without judgment. Similarly, in Feng Shui, the number 7 aligns with the metal element, symbolizing clarity, reflection, and focus, qualities that are essential for spiritual alignment and personal growth. Embracing the energy of 7 in daily life can be a transformative experience. Its wisdom calls us to step away from the noise of the world and delve into the sanctuary of our inner selves. By cultivating moments of mindfulness and solitude, we create the space needed to listen to our thoughts and uncover hidden truths. Writing down our feelings and reflections can also offer profound clarity, revealing patterns and insights that guide our journey. The energy of 7 thrives in simplicity. By fostering a space for contemplation, whether through soft lighting, natural materials, or a minimalist environment, we encourage reflection and focus. This is not only a physical practice but also a spiritual one. Engaging in meaningful study, exploring subjects that inspire us, and seeking knowledge are powerful ways to channel the wisdom of 7 into our lives. For Cancer, the number 7 serves as a grounding force. It encourages them to embrace their natural intuition and channel it into meaningful self-discovery. This journey doesn't just enhance their connection with others, but also deepens their relationship with themselves. It reminds Cancer that their strength lies not only in their empathy, but also in the clarity and wisdom gained through introspection. By tapping into the energy of 7, Cancer can navigate life's challenges with grace, trust their instincts, and make thoughtful decisions that align with their true purpose. The contemplative nature of 7 inspires a balanced perspective, guiding them to approach life with both confidence and serenity. Take a moment to reflect on this affirmation. I seek wisdom within and embrace the journey of self-discovery. The number 7 reminds us that life's most profound truths are often found in the quiet moments we spend with ourselves. Its energy encourages us to step away from distractions, explore the depths of our being, and uncover the wisdom that lies within. Through introspection, spiritual exploration, or meaningful study, 7 invites us to embark on a journey of authenticity and clarity, a journey where we discover the essence of who we truly are. Number 14, the harmony of balance and freedom. The number 14 carries a dynamic energy that weaves together independence and stability, creating a sense of harmony between the familiar and the unknown. It speaks to the delicate balance of standing firm on a secure foundation while embracing the excitement of exploration. At its core, 14 reminds us that true freedom emerges when we find equilibrium, when we adapt to change without losing our essence. In numerology, 14 combines the assertive energy of 1, symbolizing leadership and individuality, with the grounded energy of 4, which represents structure and discipline. Together, they form a synergy that encourages bold aspirations tempered with practical wisdom. This unique blend inspires us to aim high while ensuring our goals remain rooted in stability. For Cancer, a zodiac sign deeply attuned to emotional security and nurturing connections, the number 14 offers reassurance that stability and freedom are not opposites, they can coexist. Cancer's instinctive desire for safety and comfort is complemented by 14's invitation to venture beyond familiar boundaries. It encourages them to trust in their resilience, knowing they can adapt to new environments and thrive. The essence of 14 extends beyond personal growth into universal principles. In feng shui, it aligns with the concept of yin-yang balance, emphasizing the importance of duality in life, stillness and movement, rootedness and exploration. Similarly, Buddhist philosophy reflects this balance through the middle way, teaching that freedom is found in moderation and harmony between desires and discipline. Incorporating the energy of 14 into daily life offers a profound opportunity for growth. It begins with balancing routine and new experiences. A strong foundation, created through consistent habits, allows us to remain grounded as we step into unfamiliar territory. This might mean pursuing a new hobby, exploring a different career, or traveling to places yet unseen. By pairing these adventures with introspection and self-awareness, we maintain our center while embracing change. The number 14 also inspires us to take calculated risks. It's not about recklessness, but about evaluating opportunities with both logic and intuition. Each step forward is a chance to challenge ourselves while staying true to our values and long-term goals. Adaptability becomes our ally, turning unexpected changes into moments of learning and growth rather than obstacles. The energy of 14 extends to our physical surroundings as well. Designing spaces that reflect balance can foster this harmony. Feng shui principles, such as blending stable elements like wood and earth tones with light, airy accents, create an environment that mirrors the interplay between groundedness and freedom. These subtle adjustments can encourage a mindset open to both security and exploration. For Cancer, this energy is especially meaningful. Their emotional depth and sensitivity often lead them to seek comfort and stability. The number 14 offers a gentle push to expand their horizons, assuring them that stepping into new territory doesn't mean leaving behind what they hold dear. Instead, it's about enriching their experiences while staying true to their core values. By embracing the lessons of 14, Cancer finds the courage to pursue dreams, take bold steps, and welcome change, all while maintaining their emotional foundation. This balance allows them to feel both secure and free, a duality that leads to lasting fulfillment. Reflect on this affirmation. I create balance and embrace freedom in all areas of my life. The number 14 reminds us that life is a dance between stability and exploration. When we hold fast to what grounds us while stepping boldly into the unknown, we discover a world of possibilities without losing sight of who we truly are. Whether pursuing a new adventure, taking a leap of faith, or simply finding harmony in the everyday, 14 calls us to trust that balance is the key to true freedom. Number 22, Mastery and Vision. Known as the Master Builder in Numerology, the number 22 embodies the power to turn dreams into reality. It bridges the spiritual and material worlds, inspiring us to manifest our highest visions through focused effort and determination. The essence of 22 is about more than just achieving goals. It's about creating a legacy that is both practical and profoundly meaningful, leaving an enduring impact on the world. Considered one of the most powerful numbers in numerology, 22 carries a unique energy capable of transforming ideas into tangible outcomes. It combines the cooperative, balanced energy of 2 with its amplified vibration as a master number, fostering clarity, confidence, and perseverance. This potent synergy encourages the pursuit of visionary projects while maintaining a grounded approach to their realization. For Cancer, a sign known for its emotional depth and rich imagination, the number 22 offers the structure and discipline needed to bring creative visions to life. While Cancer naturally excels in intuition and creativity, the energy of 22 grounds these qualities, transforming abstract ideas into practical action. It reminds Cancer that their emotional insights can be channeled into building something lasting and impactful. In spiritual traditions, the number 22 resonates with principles of purposeful action. In Buddhist philosophy, it reflects the concept of right action, mindfully pursuing goals that align with one's values and ethics. Similarly, Feng Shui emphasizes the harmony of 22 in balancing ambition and practicality, encouraging the creation of environments that support focus and determination. The energy of 22 invites us to take intentional steps toward our goals. It begins with setting clear, actionable objectives, breaking down big dreams into manageable milestones. Like a master builder, we are encouraged to lay strong foundations, whether by improving skills, forming partnerships, or investing in resources that support our ambitions. As we balance vision with consistent action, we are reminded that success is built not just on inspiration, but on persistent effort. A supportive environment also plays a crucial role in channeling the energy of 22. Organizing our spaces, incorporating natural light, and surrounding ourselves with symbols of achievement can enhance focus and productivity. These small but intentional changes align our physical world with our ambitions, fostering clarity and purpose. For Cancer, the number 22 offers a powerful synergy. It provides the structure needed to anchor their dreams, enabling them to balance their nurturing nature with the determination required for achievement. This energy encourages Cancer to trust their intuition while embracing the discipline to act, creating a harmonious blend of creativity and practicality. By aligning with the energy of 22, Cancer can transform their visions into a legacy that reflects both their emotional depth and their capacity for tangible success. This balance allows them to pursue their goals with confidence, creating a life that is deeply fulfilling and profoundly impactful. Reflect on this affirmation. I channel my vision into purposeful action, creating a lasting legacy. The number 22 teaches us that dreams are meant to be built, not just imagined. It reminds us that mastery comes from bridging inspiration with action, turning lofty aspirations into meaningful achievements. Whether embarking on a new project, striving for personal growth, or pursuing a career goal, 22 calls us to approach our vision with clarity, confidence, and unwavering determination. Number 33, the power of compassion and leadership. The number 33, known as the master teacher in numerology, carries an energy of profound compassion and spiritual leadership. It embodies a call to guide and uplift others, using your unique gifts to create meaningful connections and inspire positive change. At its core, 33 represents a harmonious blend of nurturing care and purposeful leadership, urging us to dedicate ourselves to the betterment of humanity. In numerology, 33 vibrates with the frequency of unconditional love and selfless service. As a master number, it amplifies the creative and communicative energy of 3, elevating it to a higher spiritual plane. This energy encourages us to transcend personal ambitions, focusing instead on contributions that uplift the collective and foster a sense of unity. For Cancer, a zodiac sign defined by emotional depth and an instinctive desire to nurture, the energy of 33 resonates deeply. Cancer thrives in environments where their empathy and intuition are valued, and 33 magnifies these qualities, encouraging them to step confidently into roles of compassionate leadership. It inspires Cancer to guide others with authenticity, creating harmony within their communities and fostering meaningful relationships. This energy finds echoes in spiritual traditions. In Buddhist philosophy, 33 aligns with the concept of the Bodhisattva, a being dedicated to compassion and enlightenment for the benefit of all. Similarly, in Feng Shui, 33 is symbolized by nurturing elements such as flowing water or vibrant plants, reflecting growth, care, and abundance in shared spaces. The energy of 33 calls us to integrate compassion and leadership into our daily lives. It begins with a commitment to serve others with kindness and integrity. By embracing roles that allow us to lead by example, whether at work, in relationships, or within our communities, we can create a ripple effect of positivity. Prioritizing empathy in interactions and practicing active listening also deepens our connections, building trust and understanding in every relationship. Our physical surroundings can further support this energy by designing spaces that encourage warmth and connection, such as incorporating natural textures, soft lighting, or symbols of unity. We create environments that reflect the nurturing spirit of 33. Sharing our knowledge and experiences, whether by mentoring, teaching, or simply offering guidance, becomes another powerful way to embody the essence of this number. Acts of kindness, no matter how small, embody the compassionate leadership of 33. Offering encouragement, Lending a helping hand, or even a simple gesture of care can have a profound impact, creating waves of positivity that extend far beyond the moment. For Cancer, this number offers a powerful affirmation of their natural sensitivity and nurturing instincts. It calls them to embrace their role as emotional anchors, using their intuition to lead with empathy. At the same time, 33 gently reminds Cancer to balance their selflessness with self-care, ensuring they recharge emotionally to sustain their ability to support others. Reflect on this affirmation. I lead with compassion, creating meaningful connections and positive change. The number 33 is a reminder that leadership is not about authority but about service. It inspires us to uplift others through our actions, words, and presence, dedicating ourselves to a life of purpose and kindness. Whether through small acts of care or larger contributions to your community, 33 calls you to lead with your heart, leaving a legacy of compassion that echoes far into the future. Number 44, Strength and Stability. The number 44 embodies a grounded energy that symbolizes strength, stability, and resilience. As a master number in numerology, it amplifies the steady, dependable qualities of 4, creating a powerful vibration that supports the building of strong foundations for long-term success. The essence of 44 encourages perseverance and focus, urging us to overcome challenges while staying true to our core values. It teaches us to balance practicality with determination, ensuring that our efforts lead to sustainable growth and lasting fulfillment. In numerology, 44 represents hard work, discipline, and reliability, intensified to a higher degree. It urges us to trust in the process of building something meaningful and enduring. While the number 4 emphasizes structure and consistency, 44 amplifies this energy, inspiring us to act with purpose and confidence as we create results that stand the test of time. For Cancer, a sign deeply attuned to emotional security and nurturing, the energy of 44 provides a strong and reassuring foundation. It aligns perfectly with Cancer's need for stability, offering the grounding and persistence required to navigate life's challenges. The number 44 serves as a reminder of Cancer's natural resilience and their ability to achieve meaningful goals by combining emotional depth with practical determination. The energy of 44 also echoes principles found in spiritual and philosophical traditions. In Buddhist teachings, it reflects the concept of right effort, guiding us to dedicate energy mindfully toward pursuits that align with our values. In Feng Shui, the energy of 44 emphasizes creating stability in our surroundings, balancing the physical and emotional elements of our spaces to foster harmony and growth. Incorporating the energy of 44 into daily life begins with strengthening your foundations. Whether in your career, relationships, or personal goals, this energy calls for deliberate focus on the things that truly matter. It's about honing your skills, building trust, and establishing habits that support long-term success. When obstacles arise, 44 reminds you to stay resilient, drawing strength from past achievements and trusting that persistence will lead to meaningful outcomes. Creating grounded environments can also amplify the energy of 44. By applying Feng Shui principles, you can design spaces that feel stable and supportive. Using earthy tones, symmetrical designs, or elements like stone and wood can symbolize strength and durability, creating a sense of balance and security in your surroundings. Equally important is balancing action with reflection. Taking time to pause, meditate, or journal helps maintain emotional balance and keeps you connected to your goals. The energy of 44 also emphasizes the importance of long-term vision. Breaking down larger ambitions into manageable steps allows for steady progress, celebrating each milestone along the way. This process not only builds confidence but also reinforces the solid foundation needed to achieve your dreams. For Cancer, the number 44 acts as an anchor of stability. It encourages them to trust their emotional resilience and to approach their aspirations with confidence. Even in uncertain times, Cancer's natural ability to nurture and build is amplified by 44's energy, enabling them to create foundations that support their growth while uplifting those around them. Reflect on this affirmation. I build my life with strength and resilience, creating a foundation for lasting success. The number 44 reminds us that true strength lies in persistence and patience. It calls us to trust the journey of growth, knowing that each step we take contributes to a legacy of stability and achievement. Whether you're pursuing personal ambitions, strengthening relationships, or advancing in your career, 44 invites you to approach every moment with focus and intention, confident that the foundation you build today will support a thriving and secure future. Number 56, Harmony and Growth. The number 56 embodies the delicate balance between ambition and nurturing, offering a pathway to growth that honors harmony in all aspects of life. It invites us to adapt with grace, embrace change, and foster emotional well-being through meaningful relationships. At its core, 56 reminds us that growth and harmony are not opposites but complementary forces, working together to create a fulfilling and balanced existence. In numerology, 56 combines the energies of 5 and 6, forming a unique vibration of balanced progression. The number 5 symbolizes adaptability, exploration, and progress, encouraging us to embrace new experiences and opportunities. Meanwhile, 6 resonates with nurturing, responsibility, and harmony, grounding us in our emotional connections and values. Together, these energies inspire us to grow sustainably, evolving without losing sight of what truly matters. For Cancer, a sign deeply connected to emotional depth and stability, the energy of 56 provides reassurance and direction. It encourages Cancer to honor their need for security while exploring new opportunities for personal and professional growth. This balance aligns perfectly with Cancer's natural instinct to nurture others while striving for their own ambitions, creating a harmony that feels both empowering and comforting. The energy of 56 resonates with universal principles found in spiritual and philosophical traditions. In Buddhist philosophy, it aligns with the principle of right balance, teaching that harmony emerges when ambition is tempered with compassion and growth is paired with mindfulness. Similarly, in Feng Shui, 56 embodies the seamless flow between stability and adaptability, encouraging environments that support both change and constancy. Incorporating the energy of 56 into daily life begins with intentional actions. Approaching change with an open heart and mind allows us to align new opportunities with our long-term goals while maintaining emotional balance. Investing in meaningful relationships fosters the supportive connections that nourish both ourselves and others. At the same time, staying grounded in core values provides a foundation for sustainable growth, ensuring that every step forward is both intentional and impactful. Our physical environments can also reflect the harmony of 56. By designing spaces that promote balance and well-being, such as incorporating natural light, plants, or soothing colors, we create settings that encourage both personal growth and emotional security. Self-care is equally important, nurturing ourselves through practices like meditation, journaling, or spending time in nature ensures we remain resilient and recharged, ready to embrace the challenges and opportunities ahead. For Cancer, the number 56 serves as a gentle reminder that growth does not have to come at the expense of harmony. While Cancer often hesitates to step into change, 56 offers the reassurance that they can move forward with grace, taking each step in alignment with their values and emotional needs. The nurturing energy of 6 encourages Cancer to deepen their relationships, while the adaptability of 5 inspires them to face new experiences with courage and confidence. Reflect on this affirmation. I grow with harmony and grace, nurturing myself and those around me. The number 56 teaches us that balance is the key to meaningful growth. It reminds us that ambition, when harmonized with care, creates a path of progress that feels both sustainable and fulfilling. Whether navigating career shifts, strengthening relationships, or finding peace amid transitions, 56 inspires us to embrace change with trust, knowing that harmony and growth are always within reach. Number 68, Abundance and Transformation. The number 68 carries a powerful energy of abundance and transformation, merging the nurturing qualities of 6 with the ambitious drive of 8. It invites us to embrace change as a pathway to personal and collective growth, aligning our values with purposeful action. This unique blend of energies encourages a harmonious approach to life, where compassion and responsibility meet achievement and expansion, unlocking profound transformation and lasting success. In numerology, 68 represents the balance between love, care, and responsibility, symbolized by the number 6, and the ambition, wealth, and personal growth embodied by the number 8. Together, these numbers create a vibration that inspires meaningful action, reminding us to ground our goals in authenticity while striving for excellence. It's an invitation to think big, act decisively, and nurture both our inner world and external pursuits. For Cancer, a zodiac sign deeply connected to emotional security and intuition, the energy of 68 offers a guiding light. It reassures Cancer that growth and transformation do not mean losing their grounding. Instead, it encourages them to use their natural empathy and nurturing qualities to navigate change with confidence, aligning their inner values with external goals. By stepping outside their comfort zone, Cancer can discover the power of transformation as a tool for fulfillment. This energy resonates with broader philosophical teachings. In Buddhist philosophy, 68 aligns with the principle of mindful action, emphasizing the importance of approaching growth with intention and awareness. Similarly, in Feng Shui, 68 reflects the balance between creating spaces that nurture relationships and those that support ambition and success. It suggests integrating elements that symbolize both prosperity and care, fostering a harmonious flow of energy in your surroundings. To integrate the energy of 68 into your life, start by embracing meaningful change, transitions, whether in relationships, career, or personal growth, are opportunities to expand your horizons. The nurturing energy of 6 reminds us to cultivate strong, supportive connections, while the ambitious energy of 8 encourages setting clear, actionable goals. By balancing these energies, we create a foundation for sustained progress. Your environment plays a crucial role in reflecting the energy of 68. Applying feng shui principles, you can design spaces that foster prosperity and harmony. Adding elements like flowing water to represent abundance, plants for growth, or family photos for connection creates a balanced and inspiring atmosphere. This alignment between your external and internal worlds helps you navigate change with confidence and purpose. For Cancer, the lessons of 68 are especially transformative. This number reminds Cancer that their deep emotional core is a strength, not a limitation. By blending their nurturing instincts with focused ambition, they can achieve goals that align with both their personal values and their vision for the future. It reassures Cancer that transformation is not about losing security but building a more abundant and stable foundation for what lies ahead. Reflect on this affirmation. I embrace transformation and align my actions with abundance and purpose. The number 68 reminds us that abundance is not merely material, it is a reflection of purposeful growth and authentic alignment. By embracing change with open hearts and clear intentions, we unlock the infinite possibilities that lie ahead. Whether pursuing new opportunities, nurturing meaningful relationships, or transforming your environment, 68 calls you to act with grace and determination, creating a life that is both prosperous and deeply fulfilling. As we've journeyed through the profound energy of numbers, it becomes clear that they are far more than mathematical constructs. Numbers are universal guides, illuminating paths toward growth, balance, and purpose. Each carries its unique vibration, inviting us to embrace transformation with awareness and intention. They serve as bridges between the physical and the spiritual, offering insights that resonate deeply with our lives. Now, it's your turn to engage with these cosmic energies. Take a moment to reflect on this affirmation. I align my actions with the guidance of the universe, embracing balance, abundance, and purpose in every step. By sharing your affirmation in the comments, you add to a ripple of positivity and connection, inspiring others to explore their own alignment with the wisdom of numbers. This is also a chance to connect with our community. Which number resonates most with you? Have you noticed its presence guiding your journey? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments to inspire others. Your reflections can spark a sense of discovery and unity among those exploring these energies alongside you. If this exploration has enriched your journey, show your support by liking this video. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay updated as we continue to uncover the profound ways cosmic energies influence our lives. Your engagement helps nurture this space of growth, allowing more people to unlock the transformative power of numbers. As this exploration draws to a close, let's honor the incredible ways numbers shape and enrich our lives. They are not just tools or symbols, but whispers of wisdom from the universe. Numbers guide us to align with our deeper truths, offering clarity, harmony, and purpose in every step we take. Reflecting on this journey, we've discovered that numbers carry profound messages. They teach us the value of growth balanced by grounding, the beauty of transformation guided by intention, and the joy of connection that enhances our relationships and actions. These lessons remind us that the wisdom of numbers is always present, waiting for us to listen and trust. Before we part, take this blessing with you. May clarity guide your choices, harmony nurture your relationships, and trust lead you toward a life of abundance and fulfillment. This is not the end, it's the beginning of a deeper journey together. Stay connected as we continue to explore the energies shaping our lives, uncovering more wisdom and alignment in the process. Remember, the universe speaks to us in numbers. Listen closely, trust their guidance, and embrace the transformation they inspire. If this message resonates with you, take a moment to like this video and share your reflections in the comments. Let us know how the wisdom of numbers has touched your life. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell to join us on future explorations. Together, we'll continue uncovering the infinite possibilities within and aligning with the energy of transformation. Thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, may your path be filled with light, balance, and limitless growth.